IVM.
Hi guys, this week's episode of the Edges Sledges Cricket Podcast is brought to you by Storytel, a provider of audiobooks and ebooks with nearly 100,000 titles in its database. So while Storytel is sponsoring our podcast, we're going to be recommending a book a week for you guys. The good news for you is that you can get this book for free if you go to storytel.com/IVM. That's storytel.com/IVM. Sign up through that link and you'll get a 30-day free trial instead of a 14-day free trial. This week's book is Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And the reason for that is David Gower, who just finished his commentary career with Sky, tweeted straight after, "So long and thanks for all the fish," which is one of the famous lines from that book. Now, to find out the answer to life, the universe, and everything, listen to Edges and Sledges. Enjoy this week's show. Welcome everyone to episode 76 of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. You've got DJ here this week, and I've got with me Ashwin Garg all the way from Cincinnati. Ashwin, how's it going, man?
It's going well. I was telling you just before we went live, I'm a little bit nervous because it's been 3 weeks, I think, since I last recorded. And that's the longest gap I've had since March of 2018 when we started the show. So it's pretty crazy to think about, but happy to be back, happy to be recording. Not so happy with India's T20 performances, but we have the rest of the show to talk about that.
Indeed, and we seem to be playing musical chairs because we just can't find a time to get the three of us together on the podcast. Last week it was Varun and myself. This week it's you and me, and the week before that it was you and Varun. So hopefully we'll get all three of us back on the show together sometime soon. But again, plenty to talk about in the world of cricket. Yes, we're an Indian cricket podcast that focuses on Indian cricket and the IPL mainly. But the Ashes have concluded, and we recorded last week while Varun and I were speaking, while he was here in London actually, and the fifth test was going on. England looked well in control of that test, and they did in fact go on to win it. So the Ashes ended 2-2, but the urn went home with Australia, although it actually stayed in England. So a bit of a funny one there. Ashwin, did you get a chance to watch the fifth test match?
I did, but what did I miss? Do you want to just bring me up to speed? Why does the urn stay in England? Is that just where it always stays?
Oh, so apparently the urn was a gift to the English. So it is owned by the English. That's why it always stays at Lord's, right? It's on a tour, I think, to Victoria. So it'll be displayed in the museum for a couple of months later this year.
I'm sure
but
some of our
it's owned by the MCC.
I'm sure some of our listeners who are history buffs are chuckling with me because there are lots of other quote-unquote gifts to the English that they like to keep, which I'm not sure if they were really gifts or not. But anyway.
I think we should rename the India-England Pataudi series the Kohinoor series. What do you think?
That would be amazing. Just bring it back.
Winner takes all.
But it doesn't matter. The diamond will still stay in England by the sound of it if the Ashes or anything to go on.
At least Kohli will get his hands on it. If it's played in India, that is. Anyway, we digress. Yes. Ashwin, the Ashes fifth test. Surprisingly, this test, Steve Smith didn't get 100, but Jafra Archer took another 6 first. So your thoughts on the fifth test, and was it a bit anticlimactic the way it ended, the Ashes?
You know, I think maybe a little bit, but I think it was honestly seems like a fair result. I think there's probably no better descriptor of the total of the Ashes in totality than the fact that it ended 2-2, but Australia got to take home the Ashes. Because for me, I think Australia was clearly the better side, but playing at home has an inherent advantage, and England capitalized on a few key sessions. If you really look at five full tests, a few rain delays, etc., one draw, there were just a few key sessions when England capitalized. So I think maybe a fair result would have been 2-1. I think 3-1 would have been a little bit harsh, but I get it. I think it's just poetic almost that England tied the World Cup final, tied the Super Over, and won the World Cup. And then they drew the Ashes, but don't get to keep the urn. So pretty poetic for me. I think that's cricket for you.
Yeah, great story. I mean, the urn is actually just a perfume bottle, right? Which was gifted by the then England captain during the 1882-83 tour of Australia. So
I'm learning a lot of new things about the Ashes and the urn today. I had no idea about any of this.
Yeah, and there was another great story. Graham Swan, right? He talks about in this film called The Edge, which came out following the English team and stuff. He talks about, I had this massive dream for England. I'm going to lift the Ashes when we win the Ashes and all of that stuff. And when they do actually win the Ashes, he looks underneath the urn and it says £4.50 from the Lord's Cricket Shop. Because they can't actually have the original urn.
Are you serious?
On
That's
display.
amazing.
Yeah, because there's champagne and stuff being thrown around. I mean, you can't have the actual thing. The actual thing is in the museum.
That, you and I can buy at the Lord's gift shop is exactly what they left in all those iconic pictures.
Exactly.
Wow.
Great story. Huh?
Anyway, that's great. Yeah.
Anyway, coming back to the cricket, Australia won the Ashes in Manchester, and presumably they had a really good time. From what the pictures looked like, they went large on the champagne. Was there a bit of a hangover when Tim Paine just decided to field first on what looked like a bat first track?
Yeah, I have no real explanation for it, and it doesn't sound like, honestly, anybody does. But to me, that was their decision maker, right? In general, your rule of thumb on a test wicket, even if it's going to help the bowlers early morning on day one, it's still never easy to chase or bat the fourth innings. So for me, I think your rule of thumb in England, Australia especially, is to bat first when you win the toss. I don't see sufficient logic for him to have bowled first. I mean, I get it. They thought they'd get some early help with the new ball. They picked up one early wicket, I think. Joe Denley didn't do too well in the first innings, if I remember. But I think it was a wrong decision. And so I don't know whether it was the Manchester hangover or a little bit of hubris or something they thought they saw in the pitch that we didn't. But they came up short. I mean, it's interesting. They only fell 70-odd runs short in the first innings. But then England's second innings is where they really hit the final nail in the coffin.
Yeah, terrific stuff from England actually coming back to maybe save Joe Root's captaincy. He got a few runs as well, got a few wickets, ended up with a couple of catches to end the game. So nice way for him to end the summer. And what an incredible summer it was, Ashwin. Was this I think we've been actually treated to some incredible cricket over the last few months. I mean, we follow cricket so much. We watched the IPL, which I thought, in my view, was one of the best, most quality IPLs we've seen for a while. That was super competitive, ended on the last ball with a wicket, with the Mumbai Indians winning it. And then we treated to a World Cup, a humdinger of a final. And then we had these Ashes. So what are your memories of this summer, English summer, I should say, of 2019? Was it the summer of Stokes, the summer of Smith, or the summer of someone else?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And there's so many incredible, memorable moments. As I was thinking this through, I mean, I even think through India winning 8 out of the 9 matches in the group stage of the World Cup. That was pretty incredible. Rohit Sharma with 5 centuries. The game against Australia just stays in my mind. Then obviously we had that World Cup final, which none of us will probably ever forget in our lifetimes. And then, of course, a really incredible Ashes series. So for me, I think this is a cheap answer, but I think it's a shared summer of Stokes and summer of Smith. And it's very interesting to think about the parallels because to an extent, they're both redemption stories for different reasons. Smith obviously redeeming himself and saying, you can boo me all you want. I've served my time away from the game for Sandpaper Gate, and I'm going to do nothing other than let my bat do the talking. And honestly, he was getting standing ovations by the end of the Ashes. And so that you guys said it on last week's show, but he just basically shut all his naysayers up with the bat. And then Stokes, obviously the contrast, but to be player of the series in the World Cup and obviously help them win the World Cup final and then win the most critical Ashes match the way he won it by batting with Jack Leach and putting 135 runs up. Just absolutely outstanding summer. Redeemed himself more from a personal standpoint because there was a time when we thought he might be sitting in prison right now. So outstanding summer. The only other sort of contender or close next for me is Jofra Archer. Picked up a couple of 2 6-wicket hauls in his first 4 test matches and just looks like he belongs. Looks like we were all stupid to think back to March, April when we weren't even sure if he'd play the World Cup, but an outstanding summer for him.
Yeah, and he's done pretty well. I think he's just picked up an all-format contract as well, Ashwin. Do you know anything about that?
He has. Actually, fun fact before we get to talking about the contracts, I wanted to share an interesting stat. I don't know if you heard this one, but in the Ashes, the final Ashes test, it was really interesting because England picked up 20 wickets. So they got Australia out both times. But it was the first time in the history of the game that a team has taken 20 wickets, but in each innings, different bowlers have taken the wickets, meaning there was not a single English bowler who took a wicket in both innings. So the first innings, Archer, Curran and Wokes took all 10 combined. And in the second innings, it was Broad, Leach, and Root who took all 10 wickets. And anyway, this may just be interesting for a stats guy like me, but I thought that was really fascinating. I can't think of a situation or a team where this would have happened before.
Yeah, that's absolutely incredible. It shows you the number of options England has at its disposal, right? I mean, because Root bowled as well and picked up some wickets in the second innings, so maybe that saved the other bowlers from doing it. But one last thought from you on the Ashes, Ashwin, and it is how much did the absence of Jimmy Anderson affect this result? Because Joe Root came up with a what if type of answer at the end, saying, oh, what if Jimmy had been fit? What if Smith hadn't scored all those runs? We may have won, which seemed a bit strange and a bit odd to me. But is it fair to say that Jimmy Anderson's absence was made up for by Jofra Archer, or was he missed?
I honestly think it was more than made up for by Jofra Archer. And I've no disrespect for Jimmy Anderson as a cricketer. Side note,
even though he blocked
that he blocked us on Twitter, I don't love that. But as a bowler, he's had a great career. So no disrespect there. But I think Jofra Archer just brought some fresh blood and just unbelievable.
Flesh and blood.
There you go. Unbelievable. I mean, he did. He was hitting the batsman on the head over and over again, on the elbow, on the shoulder. I'm sure there was some blood involved. But really, really incredible series for Archer. I honestly think Anderson may have hindered them a little bit, because if you really look at it, Curran and Wokes had pretty good series too. I mean, Curran just had the one game. Wokes had pretty good series. They brought in Overton for that one match, which to me didn't make sense. So maybe he would have slotted in as a third seamer. I'm not sure you have a world where you have Broad, Archer, and Anderson playing together. So for me, I think no harm, no foul on Anderson being left out. If Broad, Archer, and the third seamer couldn't get Smith out, I don't think Anderson would have.
Yeah, and remember, Jofra Archer did draw some blood as well. Alex Carey hit him on the head and the helmet fell off, remember? Yeah. I mean, what a summer it's been. I mean, we talk about these highlights like Headingley and stuff, but we had all of that stuff. We had the Stokes catch in the first game. You had Labuschagne getting hit in the face and bouncing back up like a boxer. You had Kohli telling the crowd not to boo Steve Smith.
You're mentioning Labuschagne or Labuschagne, whatever we want to call him. But first, Smith, he came in as a concussion substitute for the first time, 20 days after the rule was instituted, right? So just incredible.
Yeah, no, I really hope the winter actually matches up to the summer, because I think we've genuinely been spoiled. We've had some absolutely amazing cricket, which I don't know whether we've appreciated. It started probably from the South African tour by Sri Lanka, where Kushal Perera played that 153, and all sorts of crazy things kept happening after that. But anyway, let's move on. ECB contract, Ashwin, very quickly, just give us an update on where that goes, because obviously we're talking about Archer and he's now clearly in the mix of things.
Yeah, I think really quickly, a couple of highlights. I'm not going to go through them all, but Archer got both a red ball and a white ball contract. I thought a couple other interesting ones where Rory Burns has got a test contract, so it feels like they're continuing to back him at the top of the order. So is Joe Denley. I think Joe Denley also got a white ball contract, which was interesting for me because I don't think he's played all that much international white ball cricket. Jack Leach basically has cemented his spot. He's now England's number one spinner for at least the next year. And then what's interesting is Moeen Ali and Adil Rashid both look fairly interesting. I think they both only got white ball deals. Moeen Ali has now announced some time away from the red ball game, although he's had a really good run in the domestic season. So lots of different changes. I think the last one I would highlight is Liam Plunkett. Absolutely an incredible World Cup. And he, posted pretty publicly that he was really disappointed to not get a contract. Because remembering, these are just contracts for a year. I think what the England selectors said is he's 35. We don't see him being in the mix till the next World Cup at 39. So now's the time to bring new players in. But I think it's a little bit harsh a couple of weeks after the World Cup. So I think they probably could have given him one more year.
Yeah, I mean, he was the game changer in a lot of the World Cup games. But anyway, I mean, it is cricket is seen as big money, big game, corporate world. Ed Smith has brought in all this corporatization of cricket. So maybe that's the way forward. Who knows?
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like I'm saying, maybe the 35-year-old should have been given a chance, but in our own country, a 38-year-old has taken lots of time away from the game and is not being let go. So maybe standards are just a little different.
Oh, we're going to come to that. No, don't worry.
Maybe we should make this a drinking game. How long before from the start of the episode until I bring up Dhoni? So anyway,
we'll come back to that. It's on the agenda items, as Varun likes to call them. But anyway, moving on to the next agenda item. India is obviously playing South Africa. South Africa's touring India. The T20s were about to start. We were discussing in our last episode why India is so bad at T20 cricket. And last Sunday, basically, the first T20 in Dharamsala was abandoned without a ball being bowled. So Ashwin, Varun's prediction actually of 3-0 went straight out of the window there. The next game was in
Chandigarh. It was really funny because I wasn't on that episode, but I was listening to it after the match had been washed out. And as you guys were talking about it, I knew this was going to happen. So it was pretty funny.
Yeah, clearly. I said it may be wrong by the time the episode actually releases, but anyway.
And it absolutely was. So that was entertaining. Shows you just how good we are with predictions on this.
Yeah, follow us for fantasy tips. #. Moving on. Result number 2 was India beating South Africa by 7 wickets, 6 balls remaining. South Africa batted first, 149 for 5. Kohli took a fantastic catch of Deepak Chahar to change the game. Chahar actually bowled very well. He took 3 wickets in that game. Saini took a little bit of tap. But basically, India managed to claw back into the game after a good start by South Africa, and they just cruised the chase. I mean, Rohit Sharma didn't get many runs, but Shikhar Dhawan, Virat Kohli just put on a partnership and chased it down almost with their eyes closed. And Kohli got 72 of 52, strike rate of 138. Really nice game, wrapped it up, and some beautiful shots. There was that flick shot, Ashwin, which I think you said you'd like to watch all day, of Rabada, right?
I mean, to flick Kagiso Rabada for 6, I absolutely could watch him do that all day.
Yeah, incredible match. Well played to India. Point to note there, Rishabh Pant got 4 runs, picking out short fine leg of the left-arm spinner. Your thoughts on that, Ashwin?
On the match in general?
Yeah, the match in general. And I want to pick your brain on Rishabh Pant's shot. I think it was on. He just picked out the fielder.
I think what I said to you guys today, and I back this, and he's a Delhi player. I'll support him. I want him to do well for India. But even when he's successful, his stroke play is just so incredibly ugly. And for me, that's why when he's not successful or when one of those shots doesn't come good, it just looks so painful. Like you want to close your eyes and look away. I mean, when Rohit gets out and he edges it to slip or something, fine. Sometimes it's a good ball, sometimes it's a poor shot. But just Pant's stroke play is just so ridiculously ugly. And I think if you want to have an ugly batting stance and strange-looking stroke play, you need to probably be as good as Steve Smith to make the rest of us look away. So to your specific question, the shot was probably on, but they had a fielder perfectly positioned for that, and they knew he loves to bend down on one knee and score many of his runs behind square, and they set him up perfectly for it.
Anyway, India wasn't actually it wasn't troubled very much. I mean, we only needed to chase 149, and Kohli and Iyer finished off the job quite nicely, which was nice to see. Iyer keeping his head, getting 16 at a run a ball, it was good, right? I mean, nice win. I think it felt good. It felt like we were back to winning ways. We'd won in the West Indies as well. So it didn't feel like there were issues. But were you surprised by our selection a little bit? We had 3 non-wrist spinners or finger spinners. Is that what we're going to be doing in Australia? Playing 3 finger spinners?
I hope to God we're not, because that just doesn't make any sense to me. I think if you want to talk more broadly about our selection, this is not our best 11. I don't think anybody believes this is our best 11 for Australia. So I was thinking about this. I was angry this morning when the match happened, and we'll talk about the third match. But this is most certainly not our best 11. And now I don't know whether they're saying we still got close to 20 matches left between now and the World Cup. We got lots of time. We will figure it out. Or they're saying as we think about resting some of our players, Kohli talked a little bit about batting depth. So to answer your question, I don't think we will have 3 finger spinners, and I certainly don't think this is our strongest 11.
Very interesting. Still good to win without actually playing our best 11, and no Bumrah as well, remember that. And India took a 1-0 lead, leaving one more game in the T20 series, which we will talk about straight after the short break. So hang around, listen to the message, and we'll be back straight after the short break.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you are not following us on social media, please make sure you do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Instagram was a big week for us this week. We crossed 10,000 followers. Also, you should check out the kind of stuff that we do over there. Get a look into the studio. And, see some of the quotes and stuff like that come out, and audiograms and, all that other kind of good stuff. So, let me tell you about 2 new shows that are coming up, right? So, the first one let me talk to you about is ABCD. This show is hosted by Farhad and Sunetru. They share the ABCDs of their queer lives and dig into the memories and experiences. Tune in for a new episode every week on Tuesdays. Another show we're really excited to bring you is called Feeding 10 Billion. This show is hosted by Good Food Institute's Varun Deshpande and Ramya Ramamurthy. They talk to experts in the food industry about rethinking protein and reimagining food systems in India. New episodes out every Tuesday for this show as well. Also, Simplified's completing 150 episodes. My God, I can't believe that we're already there. They need your help to celebrate this milestone. Send us theories, concepts, or questions that you have using the hashtag Simplified150 on Twitter, or send us a DM on Instagram. And Chuck, Naren, and Shriketh will answer your questions on episode 150. On The Seen and the Unseen, Amit is in conversation with journalist and author Akshay Mukul. They deep dive into his book about the Gita Press. On Paisa Vaisa, Anupam is joined by founder and CEO of Markets Mojo, Dr. Mohit Batra. They talk about minimizing risks and maximizing returns and understanding investment behavior. On the Empowering series, Zarina is joined by celebrity fitness coach Bakr Nasser. He talks about the importance of exercising and how he started his own indoor cycling studio, Topspin. On Vartalab, Akash and Naveen talk to Tejinder Singh, the man behind the popular Insta handle Kamakha Photo Artist. On Golgappa, Trupti is joined by Monica Godbole, who shares her experience working on the set and how she found her passionate calling to creativity. On Pulyabazi, Saurabh and Pranay talk to Divyanshu Poddar, co-founder of Rocketeers, India's first solid fuel-powered model rocket kit manufacturer. On Kinetic Living, Coach Urmi shares a workout routine called Seated Twisted on Tabata Tuesdays, and on Thriving Thursdays, she highlights the benefit of nutrient-dense foods. And with that, let's get you on with your show.
Welcome back from that break, guys. We are here now, Ashwin and me, to talk about the third T20 International. India were leading 1-0. They'd won the game at Mohali, which was incidentally the site of King Kohli's great innings against Australia. Maybe that's why he actually tweeted that picture, Ashwin. What do you think? Was that why he tweeted it?
Yeah, it's very possible. I think he just said, man, you guys don't realize I was sitting at home on my couch. I saw a picture, I got nostalgic, and I tweeted a picture. I don't think I realized all the swirl it would cause.
Okay, maybe that just came to me now. Anyway, coming to the third T20 International at Bangalore, which is obviously Kohli's IPL home ground. It's a small ground. It's a great batting paradise. And I mean, I think we've come to expect captains who win the toss to bowl first and chase down the target. But interestingly, going against conventional wisdom and with an eye towards the World Cup in 2020 or the T20 World Cup, Kohli decided to chase to, in his words, challenge his batsmen and put some pressure on them. And that's what they proceeded to do. Let's just talk through the batting performance first, Ashwin. I want to understand what was going through our mind. I actually appreciate the fact that Kohli is trying to put the batsmen in different situations, right? Not just chase innings, chase down runs, batting second with Kohli and Rohit and Shikhar doing the bulk of the scoring. So you could see visibly that the openers were going hard at it. Rohit was throwing his bat at everything. Shikhar Dhawan got 36 of 25. Sharma fell early, got 9 of 8. But even Kohli, he got 9 of 15, trying to hit a 6 off Rabada. But let's talk through our middle order collapse, because I was actually quite happy that our top 3 went early because I wanted to see what our middle orders got. So let's talk through the innings from Pant, Iyer and Pandya.
Yeah, so let me really quickly jump in. I know you said middle order, but it's worth mentioning really quickly about the top order. Kohli put us in for a good reason, and I agree with you to back in. But here's a stat, because you guys made fun of me last week when you didn't have any stats. So I'm going to share another stat. Kohli averages 50.85 or nearly 51 in T20s. He's now India's highest T20I run scorer. But he averages 34 batting first and 81 batting second. So that's why I sent you guys a message earlier this morning. Kohli in chases is just a different beast himself. Now, fine, you could argue you end a lot of chases not out, etc. So even if you tamp that down a little bit, 34 first innings average and 81 chasing average is just mind-blowingly different. So I think we have set ourselves up and gotten ourselves into a position where batting first, we're just not as strong, especially if the top 3 fail. Let's get into numbers 4, 5, and 6, since you asked. First off, I'm going to ask you this back. What happened? Why did Pant walk out at 4? I don't know if you caught this on the boundary, but both Pant and Iyer got up to walk out, and then Pant ended up coming out. Or what's going on there? Who's batting where?
I think it was who got dismissed, right? Because Shikhar was the second wicket to fall. So I think the Indian team have the theory that left-hand, right-hand combinations upset the other side, which there is some merit to that. And when Shikhar Dhawan got out, he was batting, of course, with Kohli at the time. Pant walked into bat. And I suspect if Kohli had got out, then Iyer would have walked into bat to maintain the left-hand, right-hand combination, which I think Pant does give you that flexibility.
I mean, he gives you flexibility when it works, right? It feels like it hasn't worked consistently in a while. And I say consistently because he has had one-off good innings. But to me,
the highest T20 score by a wicketkeeper.
Highest T20 score by a wicketkeeper, test centuries abroad in Australia.
I'm just saying he had that one-off. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Of course, he has had one-offs. My point is, strategically, that doesn't work for me. And I'm not pro that idea that, hey, you got two good players, Pant and Iyer, there's 4/5, and depending on who else is batting, will promote the other player. I think you got to give folks time to focus, to settle in, to know their position, know their role, and just have them go in with a specific state of mind. And to me, that was missing, and that will continue to be missing if you say, based on whoever gets out, either Pant or Iyer will go on. So to me, on paper, Iyer's a 4, Pant is a 5, and that was the first miss of the 4, 5, 6 performance.
But why are we slotting them into 4 and 5? Because I got a lot of heat on Twitter for suggesting that he should open the batting, and people are like, how you can't disturb Dhawan and Rohit and all of that stuff. But I mean, you want your most explosive player to play the most number of balls.
Yeah, I'm not actually.
Surely this guy's got the fastest T20 100 domestically.
Oh, I didn't know that actually. I'm not disputing that. I'm not saying versus opening. I'm just talking about this thing that you got both guys padded up and not sure if they're going out next. Depends on who gets out. I don't think that's right for their mental state, and I'm sure people will disagree with me. I think in the IPL, Dhoni, for example, has successfully used a floating batting order to his advantage. But for me, that's kind of maybe your 6, 7, 8 you can float and bring. And hey, if one wicket falls or 2 wickets fall in the 16th over, then got it. Maybe don't send Iyer. But I think for a situation where your top 3 don't perform, you do need some consistency in who plays at 4 and 5. I think we can separately talk about Pant opening.
Yeah. Maybe. I mean, I've already stressed on that too much. I think I just want to talk through what is Pant's mindset just now. I mean, is he feeling the pressure? Is he feeling, there were some comments in the media by Shastri, and then there was Vikram Rathod and Kohli and like fearless, careless, all of that stuff. I mean, is that affecting him? Because you see, he was visibly upset, and he's usually quite a happy-go-lucky type of character. He was visibly upset. He actually hit the boundary boards on his way out.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me, man. I think the difference between even 20 years ago and now, and we've talked about this a lot on this show, but is the impact of social media and things. And everybody is scrutinizing Pant's performance more than any player in the previous generation has had to deal with. And that's just a reality. You can argue, hey, the South Africans don't get affected by it, the Aussies don't, etc. But it is tough, right? And being a cricketer who's not performing and constantly hearing and feeling the scrutiny is tough. So I do think the pressure has got to him. I think he's sort of stuck in two minds. He's not sure how much he needs to play his natural game versus consolidate a little. And he's young. And I think this is where, this has happened with Indian bowlers in the past, but if you're not correctly groomed, he could fall off the radar in the next year or two. And there are plenty of good domestic keeper batsmen waiting to take a slot. So I think it's really important from a mental conditioning and a batting standpoint, we give him the right support over the next 6 to 12 months.
Exactly. And that's what I'm very worried about. If we're not, number 4 is a difficult place for a youngster to bat, right? You either push him right down the order and say, when you come out, just hit every ball, or you put him right up the order. You can't, expecting him to play a mature innings at number 4 it's difficult for a young player to immediately adjust to that, especially a player with a mindset like Pant. He's probably again overthinking his cricket, right? And that's affecting him.
Absolutely. So then it begs the question to talk about the rest of the order. If he's not a number 4 or maybe a consistent, consolidate kind of number 5, can you have both Pandyas and Jadeja in your side, or are you playing 4 number 7s essentially?
Yeah, or the English cricket test team. Okay, Pant aside, Iyer failed as well, and he came down the track and was just beaten by the left-arm spinner, pushing it down the leg stump. De Kock pulled off a nice stumping. Does he need to be worried? But you think? I don't know. He looked okay to me. He looked like he belonged. He was fielding nicely. He looked pretty chilled. Just made a mistake.
Iyer saw through the first T20 with Kohli. He only made 16, but he was not out at the end. He made 65, 71, and 61 in the against the West Indies. So I don't think he has to be worried. I think he's shown he belongs. He definitely fits in there. And in a match where Shikhar played okay, I guess. Rohit, Kohli, Pant, Krunal, Hardik, everybody else fails, I don't think you can single out Iyer. I think we're focused on putt because of the trend and the fact that it's been consistent and the fact that it looks incredibly ugly and painful to watch when he gets out.
True. I mean, I'm not going to focus on Krunal or Jadeja actually, because I feel that one of the two of them will actually play in our best 11, and I think they perform a fairly similar function. So I think we're just going to go with whoever does well. But I want to talk a little bit about Hardik Pandya. Was he... Because, I mean, I've been watching his Instagram stuff, man. Oh, bloody hell. He smashes it in the nets. Like, Krunal was bowling to him and he just kept donking it out of the park. Well, in the nets. But was he just rusty today, match play, or was it something else, something deeper?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's important to first remember a video on the internet is, like, you don't know if you're watching back-to-back-to-back balls, right? It was nicely curated to show only the balls he's smacking out of the park. Yeah, I think he was a little rusty. I think he had a decent role in the World Cup when he did play well. He has played pretty well. He had a great IPL. He's played pretty well for us in the last little bit. So for me, I think it's early for it to be worried about Hardik. I just think the ball wasn't coming on the bat today. And the challenge is actually not so much that he didn't play well. It's that he doesn't have the game to adapt. Because I was telling you this during the match, but in the IPL, what worked for him was take that big step outside the off stump, take almost a fifth stump guard line, angle your body towards the leg side, and then just go for that huge hoik over mid-wicket, helicopter if you need to. And that was all he did. He didn't have anything to adjust. I thought it was really interesting, actually, that I think Rabada was bowling the 20th over. Sundar is batting, hasn't played all that much, basically playing as a bowler who can bat a bit. And Rabada bowls a short ball, and he kind of leans back and just guides it over the keeper for an easy boundary. And it made you realize how Hardik has tried nothing other than that exact same hoik over mid-wicket for 10, 15 balls, and it wasn't coming good because they were bowling in slower balls, they were bowling a good length. So to me, the issue is between now and the next 12 months, you have to train Hardik to not just be one track and show the ability to adjust between different situations and different circumstances.
Absolutely agree with that. And I think my observation on that was that in the IPL, he can get away with it because the bowlers are less skillful. They're probably 10 kilometers per hour slower than Rabada. So the good bowlers are in the mid 130s. And so he's got more time to react to it. There isn't that much swing. You could see the ball was swinging a little bit out of Rabada's hand. So he had more to contend with than he has to in the IPL. So maybe that's one of the reasons why Hardik didn't come off. But overall, Ashwin, our batting, let's wrap up the batting conversation. Obviously, the batting didn't perform today. We got 134 for 9. The guy who would usually take the blame wasn't even in the side. He was taking a sabbatical. So you can't even blame that guy. But what is our approach going to be to batting? And I was thinking about this today after we lost. Our strength is to play a one-day kind of game in the T20. Will that work on the big grounds in Australia? Will the big hitting teams be caught out by the bigger grounds in Australia? And will the teams like India, which actually hit the gaps, run really hard, are quite fit, will have spinners in their ranks? Are we going about this the wrong way? Are we going about this because we lost in 2016 in India in the small grounds to the West Indies who hit the ball really big?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question and very insightful analysis that you just shared. So I agree. I think the conversation that happened before this series was probably something, I mean, hopefully more in-depth than this, but essentially, hey, England won the World Cup. England looks like the best limited over side at the moment. Let's do what they do. Okay, what do? They bat till 9 and they go after every single ball from the first ball because they believe that the batting till 9 will protect them in what's only 20 overs. Okay, we did that in this third T20. It did not work for us because that's not the type of players we have. We don't have a number 4. I mean, you don't have a Butler at 6 who can consolidate when you need him to. And you don't have a Stokes who can bat both incredibly in test matches and hit sixes when you need him to. So it's just different. It's not that India's players are any less superior. It's just that there's a different structure. And so I do agree with you. I think in the big grounds of Australia, we may be set up better for success playing the game we know than trying to be somebody we're not.
Do you know what the number 1 T20 side in the world right now is? Who it is?
It's actually Pakistan. I was watching the match of the show, which was a little bit surprising to me, but yeah.
It's crazy, isn't it? And I don't know how they've done it. I think Babar Azam averages some crazy amount in T20s. He's averages 55 or something, right? in T20s?
I have no idea, but I'm trying to look it up while you talk, so I can act like I knew that off the top of my head.
That's okay. I think, Pakistan are an interesting contender. Pakistan's 1, England are 2. India have just been leapfrogged by South Africa with the 1-all. So, we'll drop to number 4, unfortunately, after that loss.
To answer your question, you're right. He averages 54.2. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So Pakistan do somehow manage to do this really, really well. Anyway, so then we got into the field to try and defend 134. Kohli took a fantastic catch, went off clutching his back, which is a little bit of a worry for test match fans like us. Hopefully he's going to recover in time. But Ashwin, what's going on with our bowling? Washington Sundar, who Varun and I dismissed last week as a person who's not going to play the T20 World Cup, he seems to be our best spinner at the moment. What's going on with our bowling?
He seems to be the best spinner we are playing at the moment, right? It's just
correct.
It blows my mind that Kuldeep, Chahal, and Ashwin are all world-class spinners. I mean, honestly, all 3 of them would have made this South Africa team. All 3 of them could probably make most sides in the world, and yet they don't get a spot in the Indian national side. So I get it. I get what's going on. I get that we're trying to bat deep, and Sundar actually plays a good role for me because he is a smart cricketer. He's a talented finger spinner, and he can bat. But I think Jadeja and Krunal both can't be in the side. You said that already. And I just think our spinners, we're not used to being so weak from a spin standpoint in order to beef up the batting a little bit. And I continue to believe in a T20, if your top 6 guys aren't going to do it, or your top 7, your number 8 and 9 are going to do less with the bat than they could potentially do with the ball. So my personal hope is over the next 12 months, Kuldeep and Chahal play a lot of domestic cricket. They find their form back. They get their mojo. The spin twins, all that comes back, and we get them both back into the side before Australia. But I think it's going to be tough.
You know, the other guy who we dismissed last week, I don't know whether you heard that, was Tabriz Shamshi. And he's the one who actually started the whole slide.
In fairness, I think you didn't dismiss him. I think you said he's pretty talented, and Varun laughed in your face and dismissed him a little bit. And of course, then he did pretty well.
And he followed it up with Dibbly Dobbly as well. Don't forget that. Maybe Tabriz, Tabby Boy, has fooled everyone with his fluorescent shoes and stuff. I think that must be it.
Maybe we riled him up. Maybe he listens to the show. So Tabriz, if you do listen to Edges and Sledges, we'd love to have you on someday. But we're hopeful that you do, and maybe that's what riled you up and forced you to bowl the incredible spell you bowled too.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know who took the wickets the last time these 2 sides played when we were in England, in the one-day game? Do you remember that?
In the World Cup?
When all of you were here, the opener for India?
Bumrah took 3, didn't he? 2 or 3?
No,
am I remembering
Chahal.
It was Chahal, yeah, of course.
4 for 51.
Of course, I remember that now.
So,
right? Yeah. In England, right? It's not even spinning wickets necessarily.
Yeah, and home ground for RCB.
Yeah.
Yuzvendra Chahal.
I mean, if you can play for as many years as Chahal has played at the Chinnaswamy as a spinner, you're obviously talented. Because it's easy pickings for most players. I mean, watching Quinton de Kock hit Saini over the square leg boundary for 6 over and over again just showed you how A, poorly we batted, and B, how poorly we bowled, because we kept hitting the same length to de Kock and he kept smacking it out of the ground.
Yeah, and 2 points there. One, Saini, what did you think of him today? He seemed to just run out of ideas a little bit for me.
Yeah, I agree with that. I don't think Saini's in the mix for, as you think about the World Cup, etc. I don't know enough about him, honestly, in the limited overs game, because I haven't seen too much of him in T20 cricket. I know he had an absolutely rock star Ranji Trophy season for the last few years. He's been really, really strong as a test player, but I don't see him being in the mix, man. When Bumrah comes back, I think Chahar looks really good. Chahar might swap in for a Bhuvi. I just don't think Saini's going to be in the mix, and that makes me question why he's playing in the lead up to the World Cup.
Interesting. I quite like his pace, but I think he needs some more ideas. And the other thing I wanted to just pick up on was you mentioned Quinton de Kock. He batted really, really well today, but that was possible because we burned a review. Kohli burned a review trying to get Reza Hendricks out of Deepak Chahar, and in the next over, Washington Sundar bowled something that looked really quite straight to Quinton de Kock, and I think he was in his 20s then, and we'd burned our review by then, and it was taking a good chunk of leg stump out.
You asked me, was it the summer of Smith or the summer of Stokes? But it may have also been the summer of DRS, right?
Yeah, or the Dhoni review system. I mean, that's the other thing that Dhoni brings to the team, right? I mean, he didn't burn those many reviews when the guy played. But Punt didn't seem involved in that decision, which I found a bit strange. The decision to call for the DRS, which led to Kohli covering his face with his cap. It was more Rohit and Kohli who just decided to go for it more out of desperation than anything else, because it seemed to be like you could see leg stump when the ball hit him. The impact was outside leg stump. So unless there was some boomerang stuff going on, there was no way the stumps were going to be hit. So, I mean, it's those little things, right, which cost you in a game like that. So that irritated me a little bit as well. Speaking of which, Kohli went off the field and Rohit Sharma came on. And we've got a question in from one of our listeners who's tweeted in straight after the game. It's Hemant S. Trivedi who says, big defeat for India, T20 versus SA. SA more experimental than India. New T20 captain, middle order batsman, obviously referring to Bavuma, who finished off the game with a 6 and also got nearly 50 in the last game. India is losing a lot having the same captain in all three formats. Kohli looked lost in the press conference and on the ground. Different energy on the field when Rohit took charge. What do you think about that, Ashwin?
Yeah, I think if you spend any time on Twitter, and unfortunately both you and I do, it blows my mind how much the Rohit fans and the Kohli fans are divided. And I don't know what side Hemant specifically falls on. It sounds like he's pro Rohit, but from my standpoint, it just blows my mind that we are still talking about this and that there's constantly a discussion on the captaincy, because you can look at it, all the media coverage, all the discussions, however you want. And when India sweeps the West Indies in the West Indies, the team played well. Kohli batted well. The rest of the team did well. But yeah, no credit to the captain. And when India has one bad game, don't blame Rohit for failing with the bat. Don't blame Saini for bowling shitty lengths the whole time. Don't blame Krunal for giving 12 almost runs and over. All the blame falls on Kohli. So I think the nature of human beings is such that you look at whatever, you slice and dice data however you want. And those who have believed since day one that Kohli is a lackluster captain will continue to blame him when things go wrong and credit others when things go well. I do think Kohli needs to continue learning and growing as a captain, as he has done in his test captain status, where you've seen him over the last 3 years or so get a lot better as a test captain. I think he needs to get more creative, get smarter as a T20 captain. But I think it's premature to just look at it and say, let's blame the skipper.
And I think a lot of it actually comes from Kohli's record with RCB, right? Which, I mean, they haven't had the best IPL record, and Mumbai Indians have been very successful when they've been captained by Rohit. And of course, India was successful last year in the Asia Cup when they were captained by Rohit. I think it's an interesting debate, and I think it's come about because of the IPL, because no matter which way you slice and dice this, I mean, even today we were talking to somebody on Twitter, and it was, oh, the Delhi boys are going to save us when Iyer and Pant were batting. And then they came back and said, no, the Mumbai boys are going to save us when the Pandya brothers were together. In fact, at one point, Buren Hendricks got Krunal Pandya out caught by Quinton de Kock, full on in Mumbai Indians wicket. So Mumbai India could potentially beat Team India, I think, almost at that stage.
I think Mumbai Indians in T20 could beat most national sides at this point. It's how ridiculously stacked this squad is. Anyway. And didn't we just send them Sherfain Rutherford too, didn't we?
Yeah, did we?
Yeah, we traded Mayank Markanday brought him to Delhi and sent Sherfain Rutherford to Mumbai just to strengthen them a little more, because why not?
Yeah, I mean they're a weak team. They haven't won enough, of course. So we should help other teams out. Delhi fans are nice like that. But Ashwin, anything else to add to the bowling performance and the bowling overall in T20s in this series? Obviously, it's ended 1-1.
Yeah, I think what's going to be really interesting and difficult over the next 6 months is, I mean, India's now staying at home for the rest of the Indian summer, right? So they're probably going to play at least 2, maybe 3 spinners. And how that sets you up for success in Australia, I don't really know. Because you could play, let's call it Krunal and Jadeja and Sundar, and all these guys could pick up 2-3 wickets on a really, really, on a slightly bigger ground than Bangalore and on a spinning pitch. And so I think they're just going to need to be really smart and deliberate about not following one performance off a cliff, either good one or bad one. So one great performance shouldn't mean you're guaranteed a spot on the side, and one bad one shouldn't mean we're all asking for your head on a stick. So I hope that we can be a little bit far-sighted and looking a little bit longer into the future. But knowing us as Indian fans and the Indian selectors, we're probably going to overreact to one good or one bad performance from the spinners. And then there will be players like Khalil probably making their way back for the seam bowlers. You may see some new spinners. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm nervous, as you can tell.
Yeah. And what about KL Rahul? Has he become a better player simply by staying on the bench in this series?
I mean, you remember how that happened with Rahane when we were losing test matches a couple of years ago and he was injured.
And Pant for the World Cup squad. By not being there, you over-glamorize somebody's accomplishments and, you just get far too excited about it. So I think it'll be interesting to see if we sort of over-attribute performances to players who aren't there. Yeah, very interesting. We actually tweeted a link to an article from Crick Ecstasy, which was comparing the Dhawan versus Rahul numbers. So go and have a look at that. That I think is a very interesting article, which actually comes out in favor of KL Rahul with a better strike rate and average while opening the batting as well. So there is a case to be had for that.
I just think, just my closing thought on that one. I think it's interesting that Dhawan made 40 in the first match, and he basically, with Kohli, saw us home. And he was the only player who made 36 in this match. The next highest score was 19. So it's interesting that despite that, we're still scrutinizing his spot versus others. I mean, I get it. In longer term, Dhawan, we need to figure out what his role is. But he's the only player who did okay in both innings.
Yeah, it's tough. And it comes back to that overall question, because do we see T20 as a specialist's game? Do we actually do that? No, we see T20 as an extension of the one-day game, and we have people playing test matches as well as T20 cricket. I mean, England dropped Joe Root in their T20 side, who's one of the world's best players. So are we prepared to do that in the pursuit of a T20 World Cup? I don't know. You tell me, Ashwin?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think we think about it the same way. But I thought when you guys were talking about it last week, super insightful to say, the West Indies looks at it as a T20 first game, and then they see who can overlap into the ODI. And we look at it exactly as you said, an extension of the ODI game, because we call it white ball cricket, we call it limited overs cricket. So there is commonality, but I don't think we're there where we'll drop some of the marquee players if we don't think they're performing.
Absolutely. And I'm sure there'll be plenty more to chat about as we go on. There's a year to go for this T20 World Cup, and we're already so stressed and involved with it. So I'm sure there'll be plenty more number 4 debates coming up in the future. But guys, that's the show for this week. As always, keep writing into us on Twitter, on Facebook and Instagram. We are really looking forward to the test matches against South Africa. They're going to be a cracking set of test matches. It's a new look South African side. We'll obviously be following it. It's pretty good in my time zone, and I think in Varun's as well. Ashwin, are you going to be able to catch any of the test matches?
I got the worst of it. First ball is bowled at midnight, so which means it'll be the last ball should be bowled around 7:15 in the morning. So I might be able to catch 1 or 2 hours at the end of the day's play on a weekday, and maybe in the morning on Sunday night. But just disappointing time. And that's true for the Bangladesh series. It's just the rest of the Indian summer for me. So test matches in India are never fun.
So you're really, really passionate when you're following that, and I'm sure you'll catch the highlights, and we can always talk about it on this show. So
absolutely. I renewed my Hotstar subscription just for the summer of cricket, Indian summer of cricket, or Indian winter of cricket ahead. So I'm looking forward to it.
Oh man, can you put your referral code in the show notes? Is that going to get you something?
Actually, that would be pretty cool.
That would be pretty good.
I can also plug that I've been enjoying watching The Office on Hotstar, but anyway, that's a separate discussion for another day.
Absolutely. Anyway, guys, so that's the show for this week. We'll be back next week. Thanks for listening, and as always, leave us a review on iTunes. We've got some fantastic and quite funny reviews actually. So if you fancy your review being read out on air, give us 5 stars and write something funny, and we'll read it out. So thanks very much, and we will see you next week on the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Thanks.
रिश्ते में तो हम तुम्हारे पॉडकास्ट लगते हैं. नाम है फुटबॉल शुटबॉल.
Presenting Football Shortball, a show about 3 friends discussing our favorite game over a beer. Sometimes 3, maybe even 5. Hi, I'm Shiva, and with me are my 2 sidekicks, Gaurav Sapre and Karthik Iyer.
Sidekick? You mean like Batman's Robin or Van Persie Robin?
No, I mean like Alexis Sanchez, but with a little more skill than just playing the piano.
Just shows how the best players at Arsenal are mere bench warmers at United.
Oh, thank you, Iyer. But you're a Fulham supporter, so whenever you say anything to support me, I question my beliefs.
Just like how Griezmann would say, एक बार मैंने जो decision ले लिया, तो मैं अपने आप की भी नहीं सुनता.
Banter aside, we will talk match reports, transfer rumors, top controversies, fantasy football picks, and so much more. So grab a beer and tune in to Football Should Ball every Wednesday on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta. I'm B50 on Twitter. I am the host of Paisa Vaisa, a show that talks money. On my show, I speak to experts from every field of money and finance, from stock markets, equities, debt funds, credit cards, life insurance, every possible area of money and finance that you can think of. We even did an episode on cryptocurrency. I've got fantastic guests from mutual funds to personal finance experts everywhere. Robo-advisory, startups, just name it, we've got it. At Paisa Vaisa, we help you make smart decisions about money. You work hard for money. Now make your money work hard for you. New episodes out every Monday, and you can listen to my show on the IVM Podcast app or any other podcasting app that you have.